Imagine this. For a few hours now, nothing has come in. The stomach growls, the hands grow cold, the breath suddenly smells metallic, and in your mind, one question appears. Is something going wrong right now? But what if it means exactly the opposite? What if these strange symptoms are not warning signs, but proof that the body is shifting into an ancient mode? In this video, we decode 8 signs that reveal when fasting truly begins to work, from waves of hunger and cold sensations to clearer thinking. And right at the center lies what neuroscientist Dr. Mark Mattson calls the metabolic switch, the moment when the body stops burning sugar and begins switching over to fat. If fasting feels strange at the beginning, that may be the start of something extraordinary. Fasting is often perceived as something dangerous, as if the body immediately starts breaking down the moment food stops coming in. But biologically speaking, the opposite is true. The human body is not designed for constant eating. It is designed for variation. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans lived in a rhythm of eating and not eating. Between successful hunts, there were hours, sometimes days, without food. If fasting had weakened the body, humanity would never have made it this far. Instead, the body developed a sophisticated system, an internal emergency program, not driven by panic, but by efficiency. And this is exactly where the central question of this video begins. How do you know when this program is being activated? Not by the scale, not by the mirror, but by signals the body sends. Because the moment food stops coming in, the body begins to communicate. Quietly, subtly, biologically, a slightly metallic breath, cold hands, hunger that suddenly disappears, short-term fatigue, followed by surprising clarity. Many people stop right at this point because they think something is going wrong. But according to neuroscientist Dr. Mark Mattson, who researched for over 25 years at the U.S. National Institute on Aging, something critical is happening here. After about 10 to 12 hours without food, the body empties its sugar reserves. Stored glycogen is depleted. And exactly then, a fundamental shift begins. Mattson calls it the metabolic switch, a moment when the body stops relying on sugar and begins using fat as its primary energy source. What follows are ketones, small molecules produced in the liver that not only provide energy, but also act as signaling agents. They activate repair mechanisms, protect the brain, and initiate processes linked to cellular cleaning and regeneration. The initial symptoms are therefore not signs of weakness. They are the entry price into a different biological state. And right now, as the body prepares for this transition, the first clear indicators appear. Quiet signals showing that fasting is not working against you, but for you. And the first of these signs begins with something almost everyone misinterprets. Hunger that does not stay, but comes and goes. One of the first and most misunderstood signs during fasting is hunger itself. Many people believe that the longer you go without eating, the stronger hunger must become. But biologically, that is not true. Hunger does not behave like a steadily rising curve. It comes in waves. The reason lies in a hormone called ghrelin, often referred to as the hunger hormone. Ghrelin is not released randomly. It follows your habitual eating rhythm. If you usually eat lunch at noon, ghrelin rises at exactly that time. Not because your body is on the verge of collapse, but because it has learned. Food usually arrives now. And this is where something fascinating happens. If you do not eat at that moment, the hunger subsides again, without calories, without harm. Many people even report something unexpected. After the hunger wave passes, they suddenly feel calmer, sometimes even more alert than before. This shows something critical. Hunger is not an emergency. It is a signal, a test from the body, a kind of biological knock on the door. Is something still coming, or should I switch? When these waves come and go without eating, the body begins to understand that it can no longer rely on a fixed eating schedule. And that is exactly the moment it starts becoming flexible. It begins activating internal energy sources. Fat reserves are slowly released. Insulin drops, and metabolism prepares for the next step. That is why hunger in waves is not a sign of breakdown. It is a sign of adaptation. Most people stop fasting right here, not because it is dangerous, but because they have been taught to fear hunger. Yet biologically speaking, hunger is not an enemy. It is a language. And if you make it through this first wave, you are already closer to a state where the body begins using fat instead of sugar. Shortly after, another very unusual sign appears, one that worries many people, but is actually direct proof of this transition. A change in breath, metallic, sometimes fruity. And that is exactly what comes next. The biochemical proof that fat burning has begun. 4:6. So, after the initial hunger waves fade and the body adjusts to a new rhythm, many people experience a very strange phenomenon. Breath changes. Some describe it as metallic, others as slightly fruity, almost like fermented apples. And almost always it triggers the same reaction, concern. But from a biological perspective, the opposite is true. This smell is not a sign of poor oral hygiene. It does not come from bacteria. It comes directly from metabolism. After about 12 to 16 hours without food, the liver begins converting stored fat into so-called ketone bodies. These molecules serve as an alternative energy source, especially for the brain and muscles. Of the three main ketones, one is particularly volatile, acetone. And acetone does not leave the body through urine or sweat, but through the breath. That is why breath suddenly smells different. What is happening here is biochemically clear. The body is no longer primarily burning sugar, but has begun using fat as its main fuel. Neuroscientist Dr. Mark Mattson describes this moment as a physiological turning point, a transition into a state that evolution designed to keep humans functional, even without food. Many people report a strange sense of lightness during this phase. The mind becomes clearer. Energy feels more stable. Not explosive like after sugar, but calm and steady. This is because ketones fuel the brain differently than glucose. They provide energy without sharp fluctuations. No spike, no crash. If the breath odor is unpleasant, it should not be masked with sugary gum or candy. That would force metabolism back into sugar-burning mode. Water, unsweetened tea, or simply patience are enough. Because this smell is temporary. It is a quiet signal from the body saying, we have switched. But as soon as this new fuel becomes active, another sign appears. A physical sensation many find uncomfortable, yet deeply rooted in our evolution. Suddenly, hands and feet become cold. And that is no coincidence. The body's ancient energy-saving mode, 6:08 in the morning. Shortly after breath reveals the shift to fat burning, many people notice something else. Hands grow cold, feet as well, even though the room temperature has not changed. For many, this feels like a warning sign, as if the body is losing energy. But biologically, something very different is happening. Once food stops coming in, insulin levels drop significantly. Insulin is not just a blood sugar hormone, it is also a signal telling the body whether energy is abundant. When insulin falls, the body understands. Energy must be used efficiently. Heat production from digestion disappears. At the same time, blood flow is redistributed. Less blood to hands and feet, more blood to the heart, liver, and brain. This principle is called thermal prioritization. For our ancestors, this was essential for survival. During times without food, the body could not afford to keep every fingertip warm. The focus was on the core, on organs that secure life. And even though today few people need to search for food, the body still reacts according to this ancient program. Cold hands are therefore not a sign of weakness. They are a sign of adaptation. The body enters a mode where energy is not wasted, but strategically allocated. A sweater, warm water, a calm walk. That is usually enough to feel comfortable again. But while the body conserves energy on the outside, something decisive happens on the inside. A transition that, for many, is the hardest part of fasting. Suddenly everything feels heavy. The mind slows down, energy drops. Many stop here. Yet, this is exactly the moment that determines whether the body reaches the next stage. Because after this phase comes something unexpected. Not less energy, but a stable, calm strength that feels completely different from anything before. And that is what we move into now, the moment the body truly switches. 8 going 10:30. After the body conserves energy and redistributes circulation, another sensation often appears: fatigue. The head feels heavy, thoughts slow down, it feels like the battery is draining. At this point, many believe fasting is not working, that the body is breaking down. But biologically, this is exactly the transition phase. You can think of it like a car that has run on gasoline for decades and suddenly has to switch to a new engine. The old fuel, glucose, is running low. The new fuel, fat and ketones, is not yet fully available. An energy gap forms. Insulin has already dropped. Sugar reserves are nearly empty, but ketones are not yet high enough to take over completely. This intermediate phase feels uncomfortable, but it is temporary. Right here, the metabolic switch becomes fully activated. The liver increases ketone production. Muscles learn to use fat more efficiently. The brain reorganizes its energy demand. And then something happens that surprises many. The fatigue disappears. Not explosively, but calmly, evenly. Suddenly, energy feels stable. No highs, no crashes. No afternoon slump. No irritability between meals. The body is now running on a fuel that delivers slower, but steadier, energy. During this phase, growth hormone also rises significantly. Studies show several-fold increases compared to normal states. This hormone protects muscle tissue, supports repair processes, and signals the body not to break down, but to preserve. When this calm energy sets in, it is no coincidence. It is a sign that the body has completed the transition. But while physical energy stabilizes, something equally fascinating happens, this time in the mind. At first, everything feels foggy. And then, almost imperceptibly, it becomes clear. Very clear. When the brain switches to its preferred fuel, 10:30, 12:30. After physical energy stabilizes, the transformation shifts to a particularly sensitive area, the mind. At first, many feel mentally slowed. Concentration is difficult. Thoughts feel blurred, like through a light fog. But this state is not regression. It is transition. Once ketone production is sufficiently high, something decisive happens. A specific ketone, beta-hydroxybutyrate, or BHB, crosses the blood-brain barrier and becomes the preferred fuel of nerve cells. Unlike glucose, BHB delivers energy evenly, without sharp fluctuations, without crashes. Neuronal activity stabilizes. Signal transmission becomes more efficient. And here, another key factor comes into play. Fasting increases production of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. BDNF acts like fertilizer for the brain. It protects neurons, promotes new connections, and improves learning and memory. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes sense. Our ancestors had to hunt while hungry. Lack of focus meant failure or death. The brain, therefore, developed a mechanism that does not shut down during food scarcity, but sharpens. When the fog lifts and focus, clarity, and inner calm appear, that is no coincidence. It is a sign that the brain is entering a mode it was originally built for. But while the mind becomes clearer, something else changes, something many find paradoxical. Hunger decreases. And that is the next sign. Why the body suddenly stops calling for food. 12:30:14. One of the most surprising phenomena of fasting is this. After about 24 hours, hunger often becomes less, not more. This contradicts what most people expect. Logically, it seems hunger should increase the longer you go without food. But the body works differently. The first reason again lies with the hormone ghrelin. It does not rise endlessly. It follows habits. When food does not arrive at usual eating times, the signal flattens. The body stops sounding constant alarms. The second reason is ketones. Once they are stably available, they reliably supply the brain with energy, and a well-fueled brain sends fewer hunger signals. No blood sugar spike, no crash, no panicked eat now. The third factor is the absence of blood sugar fluctuations. Without constant eating, there are no more peaks and crashes that normally trigger intense hunger. The result is paradoxical, but real. The body feels calmer, not empty, not desperate. Many describe this state as surprisingly peaceful. Thoughts of food lose urgency. This is not suppression, it is adaptation. The body is now running on internal reserves, efficient, stable, independent. But while this inner calm emerges, a background process begins that sometimes shows externally, not through energy, not through hunger, but through the skin. When the body begins cleaning on a cellular level, 14 and 15:30. For some people, fasting shows itself in an unexpected way. The skin reacts. Small blemishes, redness, sometimes itching or a dull complexion. At first glance, this looks like a bad sign, but biologically, it may mean something else. When the body goes without food for an extended time, it not only switches to fat burning, it also activates a deep repair mechanism, a process called autophagy. Autophagy literally means self-eating. Damaged cellular components are broken down and their building blocks recycled. It is like spring cleaning. Old faulty structures are removed to make room for healthy, functional cells. But during this cleanup, substances previously stored in fat tissue are released. If the liver and kidneys cannot process them immediately, the body uses an additional exit route, the skin. That is why temporary skin reactions may occur, not as damage, but as a byproduct of internal cleansing, like dust briefly swirling during cleaning before the room becomes cleaner than before. Important to know, this phase is usually temporary. Water, rest, patience. That is often enough to support the body through this process. But fasting does not only affect metabolism, muscles, and skin. It also deeply impacts the nervous system. And right there, the final, often most emotional, sign appears. When the nervous system recalibrates, 15:30, 16:45. Suddenly, emotions feel more intense. Irritability, restlessness, sometimes a strange melancholy. Many interpret this as a personal failure, but biologically, it is a normal response. During fasting, the brain switches fuel sources. Glucose drops. Ketones rise. This shift activates the HPA axis, the body's central stress and adaptation system. Hormones like cortisol and norepinephrine rise slightly, not to harm, but to increase alertness. For our ancestors, this was essential. Hunger meant stay alert, react, act. But this state is not permanent. Once ketone levels stabilize and the brain adapts, emotional experience calms as well. Mood evens out. Focus returns. Inner peace emerges. These fluctuations are not signs of instability. They are signs of recalibration, like muscle soreness after a new training stimulus. Uncomfortable, but temporary. Fasting is not simply skipping meals. It is a signal. An ancient signal the body has known for millions of years. When hunger comes in waves, when breath changes, when cold, fatigue, or emotional fluctuations appear, the body is not breaking down. It is adapting. These signs are not errors. They are chapters in a biological story quietly unfolding within. Fasting is not for everyone. People with medical conditions should always seek medical advice. But those who are healthy and curious may learn something through fasting that is often lost in the modern world. Listening to the body, not with fear, but with understanding. If you stayed until here, you are not just a viewer. You are an observer, an explorer of your own biology. Write in the comments which of these signs you have experienced yourself. And subscribe to the channel if you want to continue understanding how fasting, metabolism, and human energy truly work. The body works quietly, precisely, and more intelligently than we often believe. Let's summarize this journey once more. When hunger comes in waves, your hormonal rhythm is recalibrating. When breath smells metallic or fruity, your body has switched to fat burning. When hands and feet grow cold, the body conserves energy for what matters. When fatigue appears and then disappears, the energy gap between sugar and ketones is closing. When mental clarity emerges, your brain is using its preferred fuel. When hunger decreases after 24 hours, your system is running stably on internal reserves. When the skin reacts, cellular cleansing has begun. And when emotions fluctuate, your nervous system is recalibrating. None of this is random. Everything follows an internal logic. Fasting is not a competition, and not proof of discipline or willpower. It is also not for everyone. People with medical conditions, eating disorders, pregnancy, or on medication should always seek medical advice. This video is not medical advice. It is a scientific explanation, a look behind the scenes of what happens in the body when food is absent. The human body is not fragile. It is adaptable. It sends signals, not to punish you, but to communicate with you. Fasting does not mean ignoring the body. It means listening to it. When you do not discover weakness. You discover a system that has learned for millions of years to survive, to regenerate, and to operate efficiently. Which of these signs have you experienced? Write it in the comments. We read every single message. And if you want to understand more deeply how fasting, metabolism, and human energy truly work, subscribe to this channel. Because your body works quietly, precisely, and more intelligently than you were ever taught.